Now, so when you come to oil, oil then is simply a new site of tension, a new demonstration of that bigger crisis of identity and governance that we have. Oil is just a small example, although it's a potentially explosive one. It is designed, it's in our institutional and our state design. The challenges we're facing now are institutional, they're design flaws. What will oil do to this? I call it pouring oil on the fire. And the pun is intended that there's a fire already, a fire of governance, a fire of identity, a challenge. What I'm going to do with this oil is to pour oil on the fire. Everything else, the police, the army, infrastructure, services, all linked around the extent to which those are necessary or conducive for the economic exploitation. And I'll come back to this point. So when you see the road now, if you see the only road in Bunyoro being the road that leads to the oil, it's not an accident, it's historical. I was in Hoima about 3 months ago, and not only is it a very good road, I think it's the best road in Uganda. It's the thickest. It has
20 years lifetime.
20 years lifetime. The thickest road, you really see the mixture of tarmac and stones was done very well. The trenches are wide. It's the best road, I think. It is not accidental. Barack Obama warned African leaders recently when they were going to meet the Chinese president, make sure that the railways being built by the Chinese and the roads are not the ones leading to refineries and and to the port. Because that then is just a reproduction of the formula that was used 50 years ago, where you have a state around economics, and everything else then is founded around the motive of exploitation economically, taxation. In the 1970 argument, for instance, it is said that then you're going to put the police at the disposal of the chiefs for the purposes of collecting taxes. So that then when what's supposed to be a Uganda police service then becomes the Uganda police force. And the police then is experienced by all of us, not in the first sense as something that is going to serve and protect you, but essentially something that you first see and interact with in terms of force. So these seeds of our history are not gone. And that's why I want to start there. Because it's not about Museveni, it's not about FDC, Busingye, no. It is designed, it's in our institutional and our state design. The challenges we're facing now are institutional, they're design flaws. If you like, they are birth defects. That you have a state created coercively for the benefit of an external actor. Now, the challenge that faced us at independence was then, how do you create unity out of people who have been different, only brought together for one sole coercive purpose? An attempt was made in the 1962 Constitution, and it's one of the messiest documents you'll ever find. One of the most convoluted, confused, mismatched documents you'll ever find. But maybe, and if you compare it to the 1995 Constitution as we have, that Constitution of 1995 is very neat. It is put together well, it looks good, it reads well. It says all power belongs to the people. It says Uganda, in Article 5, it says Uganda is a sovereign republic. But is that true? Is that true? Is the neat 1995 Constitution that we have, the story that it tells, the neat story that it tells, is it a true story? Or is the real story, the real description of Uganda, best found, best reflected in the messy Constitution of 1962? What did that Constitution say, for instance, 1962? It says, you have Uganda, but then you're going to have You have the Kingdom of Uganda, then other 4 kingdoms. You're going to have the High Court of Uganda, then you shall have the High Court of Uganda, and then you're appointed as Chief Justice and the judge. You have an appointment letter that appoints you both as the judge of Uganda, but also a judge of Uganda, the High Court. You have the Uganda Police Force, but you also have the Kabaka's Police Force in the Constitution. You have the central budget, but then you have a very complicated formula for sharing of those revenues. So complicated that indeed, by 1965, we had a slew of cases, Kabaka versus Attorney General and Attorney General versus Kabaka, about how revenue should be shared. Of course, you all know the history. That impasse was resolved through violence. Now, in 1995, we have a neat document. Document that says we have the power as Ugandan, the document that says we are sovereign and united and republic. A document that says in Article 29, sub-Article 2A, that every Ugandan, so the idea that there is a Ugandan nationality, every Ugandan has the right to reside and settle in any part of the country. If that is the truth, then why did we have the tension about the so-called Afurichi? Do you recall this one? The Afurichi question? Was it in Hoima? Kibale. Where you had my brothers, the Machiga, who had settled there. Sometime they became the majority. I don't know what happened there. Someone, Machiga stands for election, is elected, and suddenly it transpires that he cannot be allowed to serve. For no other reason than that is a Machiga and not a Mugero. What then is the reality of Article 29, sub-Article 2A? In the end, that was resolved by a meeting with the president where it was sort of said, okay, fine, you stand down, and then we resolve that state. But I think that and other situations reveal the lie, the illusion of the Constitution. The illusion that we are united. The illusion of identity. The lie that comes with the neat description of Uganda as one country, one identity, common vision, common history. That is betrayed in practice. That's just one example out of very many. If it was true, if indeed Article 29(2)A is true, all Ugandans have a right to reside and settle, that tension will never have been manifested. Now, so when you come to oil, oil then is simply a new site of tension, a new demonstration of that bigger crisis of identity and governance that we have. Oil is just a small example, although it's a potentially explosive one, as I was just showing you later. So we talk of Uganda, but in reality we have a challenge of our identity as even whether we belong to this country or Uganda. And unless we sort that out, unless we sort and have an honest conversation about who we are as a country, where I want to go, how we are governed, we are moving together over a cliff. We're just then a short step away from Rwanda. We're a short step away from a Kenya. Of course, by this I mean genocidal conflict. The Kenyans always used to say, that can never happen here. Until, of course, it happens. Now we are celebrating and singing Kumbaya or Uganda, may God uphold thee, when in fact, we have a real challenge of building the state. So what then is the state of constitutionalism in Uganda? We do have a constitution, of course, but a constitution in many ways is just a set of rules. Much more important than that set of rules is the idea of constitutionalism, or a practice of following the rules you have set for yourself. Of course, in our case, the challenge is that even that set of rules is problematic. and again going back to the colonial counter. That the legacy we were left with from colonialism is that the way you obtain power is through force, through military means. And I will not bore you with the case law, but the cases that were decided from the colonial period and post 1962 have all said one thing. From the case of Mukwawa vs. Mukubira to ex-parte Matoku, up to now, the Busingye vs. Museveni, they have all said one thing. If you fight and you win, legally we shall accept you. That you fight and you win the violent conflict, the law will follow the winner. And because of this legal precedent set way beyond, way back, in 1980, when elections were rigged, you had one person go to the bush because he understood this reality. And so in 1996, in January, when this person has won, and of course I know Honorable Mawanda was saying we should not be NRM, FBC, and this is not about NRM, this is not about FBC, or UPC, or DP, whichever. It's really about the reality of our governance and what that means for oil and anything else that will come later. That's why in 1996, the moment in January you have someone swearing to uphold the Constitution, which is of course extremely ironical, because he had just obtained power by violating the Constitution. So, when in 1995 we went through this process of constitution making, there are real problems with the reality of saying that Ugandans made the Constitution in 1995. Real problems with that, precisely because it was made upon the basis of military governance. And beyond that phase, it remains military governance with the civilian phase. I'll just give you about 4 examples of that. 2004, the Court of Appeal of Uganda tried to invalidate the Referendum Act, and said, well, that Act of 2000 had been passed improperly. And the response by the President was, the major work for judges is to settle chicken and goat theft cases, but not determining the country's destiny. So that the judiciary is not supposed to determine the destiny of the country, it's supposed to determine chicken and goat theft cases. But if you look at the Constitution, it says the judiciary shall be independent, it describes the judiciary. In 2004, you were already told that there is no judiciary to speak of. 2007 March, the High Court granted bail to certain suspects of the People's Redemption Army. All of you know what happened. Armed men surrounded the High Court and basically told the judge, this was not going anywhere. 2007, the President told the people of the world that had you elected Semogerere, I would have gone back to the bush. Again, real evidence that on the one hand you have a pretense at elections, a pretense at civilian governance, a pretense at judiciaries, a pretense at parliament. But the reality is military governance. 2012, now talk about parliament. The Speaker Kadaga was trying to flex some muscles, and the President said, the Speaker is not supposed to be in dance halls, jumping up and down. The Speaker should wear a high wig and keep silent until something that needs her guidance comes up. Just again to show you the reality of the governance. Never on the illusion in the Constitution, the reality of the governance. Now, again, all of us know the trend from January 2013 up to now, the militarization that has taken place. So we're now going into another phase. Before that, we're in a phase where the military is there, but you're given civilians, and then we all enjoy the illusion of democracy. But that phase is ending. We're going into another phase where the face of the military becomes more prominent. The first pointer towards that was January 2013. The Minister of Defense, Christopher Yonga, told Parliament that if the members did not behave, the UPDF would intervene. That if politicians are not serious, the army will take over. January 16, the President repeats the same, told MPs that the military would not permit confusion in Parliament. January 2013, then Chief of Defense Forces, General Rwanda, says that the message was intended. That was not an accident. The message was well intended. And I'm quoting him, stand advised, and this is actual words, stand advised that should you not change course, other things will take place. Close quotation. July 2013, now July 2013, the same gentleman is now appointed Minister of Internal Affairs. So you're seeing the civilian clothes are being removed now. The former Chief of Defense Forces is now appointed Minister of Internal Affairs and is now leading the ID process and telling the board to convene at midnight. So transforming civilian structures into military structures. Adding on to, of course, General Kale Kayihura, who is in charge of what should have been a civilian police force. Now, I'm not telling you things that I always say at workshops and conferences. Because you could say, but you're telling us these things as the youth. Why don't you go and tell those people? Why don't you go and speak this to them? Well, November 13th, 2013, we had something very similar to this. It was the Julius Osega Memorial Lecture, where the Center for Human Rights at the University of Pretoria was celebrating the life of a Ugandan who lost his life, I think it was Somalia. A young graduate had done his master's in laws and then died in the service of this country. So was the memorial lecture, and the lecture was being delivered by President Kisambo, Joaquim Kisambo, Mozambique. Happily, General Rwanda Nyakaima was present, and again, very fortunately, General Kale Kayihura was present. And I made the same points to them. I said, look, the tragedy of our country, and I can say this partly because my name is Busingye. So I'm from that place, that west, which is said to be eating. So when I speak, I may not be seen as badly as if Okello was saying the same thing. Because Okello may be seen to be, but I will say this because I said, look, it's not that I'm against this person or that person. It's just the truth that we're heading towards, not heading towards. We have an ethnicized and militarized government. And this is not safe for anyone. Not safe for Busingye, not safe for Musoke, not safe for Okello, because it is a direct recipe for disaster. Now, in response, General Kayihura said, I was engaging in intellectual sophistry. Now, sophistry means something that appears true, but in fact is wrong, is false. Well, a year later, because that was November 13th, 2013. Now, November 2014, just this month, because I've been accused of intellectual sophistry, telling lies really. That's a very good way of saying telling lies. But now, in November, the president again makes it extremely clear that in 1995, when the motion was being made, I was saying because security matters, a number of things were put there. I'm now going to put my foot down and normalize this. So the constitutional review process that's been apparently taking place where Ugandans are being invited to some interviews is really then, it turns out, it's really the president putting his foot down and deciding what's going to do with this document that was too busy with to look at. But again, more importantly, he said, this month, even a fool knows, I'm quoting him directly, leave alone Busingye Kabumba, he said, even a fool knows that the NRM is built on the foundation of the army. I added in that same meeting of November that the youth are what? Misguided missiles. That you are misguided missiles. I think you also mentioned the question of people who are involved in AJ, taking drugs. So the idea that the governance of this country is based on the army. That even a fool knows that now. So a year ago I was accused of trying to complicate things and being dishonest intellectually. A year later, we're told that even a fool, him alone, even a fool should know that the government is mercenary. Now, what are the implications for oil governance and the youth? You, the misguided missiles, who are 76% of the country. I think we should wake up and smell the coffee, because long after these people are gone, it will be for us to fix the mess. The other question becomes how messy should things be before we wake up and fix it? What are the problems of putting oil on this situation? Well, that's the situation. Now the other question becomes, what will oil do to this? It is like, I call it pouring oil on the fire. And the pun is intended that there's a fire already, a fire of governance, a fire of identity, a challenge. What I'm going to do with this oil is to pour oil on the fire. The fire is already there. Even if there's no oil, we're going to fight. Before 5 years are gone, really, I couldn't even say. The oil just brings the dead closer. What could happen with this oil? Now, I'll just give you one quotation. It's from, well, again, I'm being accused of. It's from a gentleman who has studied the impact of oil in governance and how it's related to democracy and how it transforms people for better or for worse. A gentleman called Michael Ross. And he has written a book called The Oil Curse: How Petroleum Wealth Shaped the Development of Nations. And he says, since 1980, the developing world has become wealthier, more democratic, and more peaceful. Yet, this is only true, and I'm quoting again from him, this is only true for countries without oil. The peace, the democracy that has happened in the developing world is only true for countries without oil. The oil states scattered across the Middle East, Africa, Latin America, and Asia are no wealthier or more democratic or peaceful than they were 3 decades ago. Some are worse off. And then he gives statistics. From 1980 to 2006, per capita incomes fell 6% in Venezuela, an oil-producing nation, 45% in Gabon, income falling 45%. Oil is supposed to take you higher, 45% Gabon, and 85% in Iraq. Many oil producers like Algeria, Angola, Colombia, Nigeria, Sudan, and again Iraq have been scarred by decades of civil war. Now, that is for countries, some of which were not as bad as we are. We have a governance crisis. The oil will be pouring oil on the fire. What will happen? The bad governance that we have will become entrenched, because then, in addition to the military, you have money, patronage. And very importantly, in 2013, a report has come out, I think it's Human Rights Watch, that has said already there's a change in the conversation between the government and development partners. That before the US would say, stop this, the UK would say, we don't like the way you're doing this. Now, the convention has changed because those same members will have to come to the government to front oil companies who want to do business. The dynamics change. You have been talking about 1.6 billion stolen, the corruption has been about 1.6 etc. It changes. Now you talk about 10.6, 100.6. From what may have been petty corruption, you have grand corruption. Conflict, what is spoken about. Inequality, the entrenchment of inequality. If I've been talking about the difference between those Abarimchintu and those without, that inequality becomes stark. Misallocation of resources and violation of rights without accountability.